I would say some words about links between education and labor market in Poland, but it has, of course, a much broader sense. And I will say some words about our studies on human capital, which we are running. It's a good occasion also to inform somehow people from own university even about what we do, because actually the university work is quite segmented, as you know, and very often is so that the colleagues from the next door don't know what you are doing. So let me say something about this kind of research and to add to the framework for the future studies also in educational measurement, because it will be quite obvious what we will need in the future also in this area, and this is my purpose. It's less solving a particular problem, but rather showing the frame for the discussion, and for this what you will do also tomorrow and after tomorrow, working on improving methodological aspects of educational measurement. As I mentioned in my introduction to the conference, problems of education are becoming critical recently. The answer for the question why is easy and complex at the same time. Definitely one of the crucial issues is the need for substituting GDP growth based on the increase of the hands for work by the intensity of this work. I mean, human capital should substitute for the work, actually. And we can expect the deficit of workforce in Poland, but this is also in other European countries and more broadly speaking in OECD countries. There are, everybody knows the demographic forecasts, and they show that even if there will be in some countries a demographic increase, so the figures are quite saturating, and the situation when we had quite a long period of quite regular increase of the number of population, and then the labor force is behind us. So, as you might see, this is the estimation of the temporary immigration over 3 months from Poland. There was a jump after Poland joining Europe, and for Poland is not only demographic crisis important, but also immigration. Other countries can manage a bit their problems with immigrants coming there, although it is not without problems. In Poland we have the problem that we are the immigration country, and although the level of immigration seems to flatten, so it stabilized at the large level. If you look on the structure of immigration, so what is really problematic is the age structure, and as you might see, the main wave of immigrants are young people in fertile age. It means that together with cultural factors, which are very hard to struggle with and to revert in the short term, we have additional factor determining our problems with fertility rate and demographic crisis, which is simply outflow of people in fertile age. So it's also known at the popular level in Poland, because we are informed by the press that the fertility rate of Polish mothers is quite large, but if they are in the United Kingdom, but not in Poland. Because part of them are in the United Kingdom, simply they are not in Poland. So this is really one of the factors which will have impact of the situation we have to manage in the future. There will be aging. Poland will be one of the fastest way aging societies. Quite shortly we will have really big problems with maintaining social services for older group of population, which will increase very fast. We have now the post-war baby boomers at the last stage of their productive age, and the first part of them already started to go over this pension age border. The whole group will be moved to the pension age quite soon, so we will have really problems with finding people to work. So in this condition, education is very crucial because it is one of the factors. The next is simply innovations, technical progress, material capital, which is important to substitute, and both factors have to increase labor productivity. Otherwise, this problem with numeric capacities will convert into a prolonged economic crisis. The pressure on labor productivity is based on the need for competitiveness of economy, ability to maintain and increase GDP by shrinking labor force, capital-intensive and knowledge-based growth, which is more the challenge to us. And Poland is one of the countries, or maybe one of the unique countries in Europe recently, which was able to maintain the economic growth despite of the general economic crisis worldwide. The problem is that the main vehicles which were so helpful for Poland, one of the factors, but it's not much in this GDP growth, it's something, it's inflow of money from European structural funds, but it can be estimated for 1 percentage point of this growth. Since the beginning of the crisis, Polish economy increased by 20% until today, when all other Europe on average remained at the same level. I mean, it's a kind of zero growth. But these are this is the closing era of catching up economy. Poland was during that time in the period of catching up, like Japan was, or South Korea then after Japan, or some other countries of East Asia. They went through this period earlier, and the patterns of this historical economic pattern of development is quite well known. So it's also well known that there is a kind of saturation of the possibility to utilize these vehicles. So it's very important that the economy converts into a knowledge-based economy, and should develop very much internal sources of innovations, technical progress, and increase of labor productivity. What is also necessary in this situation is mental change of the society, mental and structural change of the society, in the sense of increased participation in permanent learning processes, in adaptation through lifelong learning to the fast-changing needs of economy. I will show some figures soon showing that we are actually in this aspect very deep in the era of catching up economy. But our educational processes should prepare the future generations to be more active in learning over the whole, over all stages of life cycle. In Poland, what happened in Poland actually in the 90s was an educational revolution. It was a kind of educational revolution in extensive sense of the word. Poland started from quite or very low level of participation rate in at the tertiary level of education. It was about 10% net of the cohort at the beginning of 90s, and it jumped up to more than 40%. Already in the late 90s, and then continued over the 20s. So the structure of the secondary education changed very heavily from the situation where we had quite a large group of pupils in the vocational schools, especially basic vocational schools. It was more than it was about 1/3 still in the mid of the 90s. It was more than 40%, 45% in the 80s. But now, as you might see, it decreased up to 15%. Sometimes there are many voices which say that it is dangerous for our economy, assuming that we need qualified workers. I will show you that the statistical truth is different from the popular truth. There is a demand, of course, in particular professions, but actually the reaction of the society, both at the secondary level, going towards more general secondary level, preparing for further study, and also this jump up in tertiary level of education is induced by simply gains from education which were apparent in Poland after transition period. And still we have a gap to some of the countries, like for example South Korea, which is very, very high with their levels of tertiary education and participation at this level. Nevertheless, having some problems with absorbing people with this kind of education, but this is also the problems with absorptions are simply based on the situation where the diploma stops to be a good signaling instrument in the situation of so high prevalence of particular level of education. What has happened also in Poland, we are luckily, yes, we improved in some cognitive aspects of educational results. It is due to some reforms which have been introduced. First, it was introducing the 1 year longer time of general education, up to 16 years, introducing the 6 years of elementary school plus 3 years of junior high school. And then changes in curriculum, and in PISA 2012, eventually Poland advanced to the group of yellow countries on these pictures. I mean these countries which are good performers, and the distance to some of the leaders is like Finland, for example, in mathematics are within the framework of statistical error. So it was important. We will observe if it is not a one-time jump. So if the results repeats in the future, in the next measurement of PISA, so it can be treated as a kind of improvement in at this level of schools, which is very important for this, which will happen later on. Also, Poland is improving gradually the participation at the lower level of, we can say, education also, I mean preschool education. But we are poor performers, stable poor performers in lifelong learning. This lowest step is Poland, I mean this violet. And we cannot jump over 5% over the years. Having a very high participation at the tertiary level, even at the master level studies, then it's treated, if you already have diploma, then you are ready, yes? And the other participations in learning are not so important. We ask ourselves, perhaps it's a problem with measurement of this participation, but it seems that it's simply a problem with participation, not with the measurement. What you might see that perhaps we will observe some improvement in the future, because our share of the people with tertiary education is relatively high in the group of people being at the market level in the good years, quite recent phenomena. So I will show you just in a few minutes the results from Human Capital Balance Study, which shows why I expect that in the future perhaps we can improve also the participation in the lifelong learning, but it will need some more years of development. The important change in Poland is also changing of the preferences among the young people concerning the type of education. The first wave of our educational revolution was based mostly on cheap studies, mainly in the area of humanistic and social studies of different type, because there was possibility to create very quickly non-public higher schools which could base on paper and pencil and some teachers usually borrowed from public schools to provide classes to the large group of young people, because we had in the 90s and the beginning of 2000s the wave of the second post-war baby boomers in the higher education. So there was a problem how to provide them with the higher education when we had a very sharp increase of ambitions, aspirations, educational aspirations on one hand, and simply a large group of young people on the second hand, plus problems with absorption potential of the labor market on the third hand, if we have that third hand somewhere. Because you can see, actually people wanted to go to tertiary education because they are clever. Perhaps they don't read international statistics, but they look around and see what the international statistics also confirm. If you look on the comparison of the educational levels, unemployment rates among people with different level of education, so you can see that among the youngest, 20, 24 years old, the pattern is obvious, so that people with higher education have better labor chances on the labor market. And if you look, for example, at the beginning, it's already 2004, Poland went out of the crisis. It was even worse in 2000 or 2001. So you can see that although at the level of tertiary education you have 31% of unemployed, so among those who are, for example, finished with the basic vocational education was more than 50% of unemployed. But it decreased, and in the year 2013 there was 23% of those who finished with tertiary education, comparing with 37% of those with the lowest level of education. The distance is smaller, but also you have to read these figures with care. Why? Because in Poland usually people and a large group of young people are studying up to the master level, because more than 50% of the graduates of the bachelor level continue their studies. So with the age 20-24, they are rather in the schools. Those who are unemployed here are early school leavers. Even if they have higher education, it's usually the bachelor education, so these are not discontinuous in the situation when all our measurements show that employers prefer people with MA to people with BA. At least in this country. If you look at the second group, 25-29 year, the distance is much higher, so 10% among those with tertiary education in Poland and 32% of those which are with very basic education, although the distance between those with higher education, those with the medium level education are not so big. Poland looks much better than, for example, Spain, but definitely worse than Germany or Austria. And there are good questions why, and one of the answers which is given, quite standard answer, is that this is due to the system of professional education in these countries. But I think that one of the factors is a different stage of the demographic development also, which should be considered. Because of course, the dual professional education in these countries is also based on the different type of the industry. Austria and Germany are those countries in Europe which maintained quite high level of industrialization in difference to the countries which converted their economies more towards service-based economies. And also have both countries, Germany and Austria, have quite large base of medium and larger size of companies which are able to provide the dual professional learning with good standards of trainings, practices. And this is not the case in Poland. In Poland, 97% of the firms are firms below less than 9 employees, and among them two-thirds are one-person registered firms. I mean, personal economic activity, which is registered. People pay for themselves taxes, but they don't employ anybody. And the rest of these micro enterprises are usually micro enterprises, so hiring only few persons. It's not a good place for good practices, and we have, let's say, maybe about 50,000 of the firms which have so a bit more employees and perhaps are able to provide trainings. So it's one of the factors, but it's much more complex than simply telling, let us change the education, because our professional education system, like vocational schools, is the dual system. I mean, the students are assumed to join the practice with learning in the school, but sometimes they are restricted to learning practice in the schools with not very much developed conditions because of the weakness of the economic environment in this respect. So quite a complex issue, but nevertheless we can look with some envy on Germany and Austria because of their long tradition of preparation of good, well-educated professionals at the lower levels. However, recently I read the report of German Innovationsindikator, where there was a kind of warning, a kind of question mark, if the dual system perhaps can be prohibiting or problematic when preparing people for innovative future. That it's one of the factors which should be observed. So sometimes we think we would like to have such problems, but nevertheless, by the German experts, it has been recently also indicated as one of the potential risks because of the early adaptation to to particular condition of work. To collect information about the relationship between the labor market and education, about the needs for competencies on the side of companies and the response on the side of, let's say, society, generally speaking, yes. We have started 5 years ago human capital study. We call this the balance of human capital. And we wanted to have more information which could be functional in narrowing competence gap at national and regional level, create evidence-based conditions for policy making concerning human capital development and dissemination of information about situation and trends concerning availability and demand for skills and competencies on the labor market. What we wanted to provide were high methodological standards, which is a really important issue because there is many research which is done not good, actually, and our purpose was to provide good representative data and as good as possible research design, implementation, and of course transparent documented methodology. All our data is and all our methodological reports, instruments, and so on, reports, final reports, are available on the web page. Everybody can reanalyze the data. Just after we provide the annual report, we provide also the general public with the data which is available, microdata which is available on the website of the project. Of course, there's always a kind of choice what kind of reports to produce. More elaborated scientific analysis or more oriented towards communication with the general public. So because of the type of financing we had and the purposes of the program, we were more oriented towards understandable analysis and presentations of less fancy figures, but with possibly good comments. And the broad dissemination of results is part of the project. So we travel. We have not only the conferences in Warsaw, but there are also regional conferences where we share the results of our program. The thematic assumption was identification of the degree to which competencies of employees match the needs of the employers, the compatibility between educational profiles at the upper secondary and university level and the needs of employers, skill profiles of job seekers and demand of employers, and determinants of lifelong learning activities. Plus, we did also research on young people, the school leavers. I mean, the last year of secondary schools and last years of the BA and MA levels. This was twice done, such a research to look into the aspirations plans and also evaluation of the education by these stakeholders. Actually, the balance means that we tried to compare. It is not easy, and here are people who are in the team working on this. We are perhaps not very happy with the achievements, but nevertheless, it gave some possibilities to say important things. So we wanted to balance these two sides. I mean, the demand for competence and the supply of competencies, and this organized the whole research. Already 5 waves have been done. The 5th from the current year is now in the period of writing the reports. So the data is already collected, cleaned, and reports are in the process of writing. The reports from 4 previous years are available on the web page for interested readers, and the data too. And if you see, the samples are quite large, because they are so large because the segments in which we work are quite numerous. So if we go into segmental analysis, then the numbers which seems to be very large start to be quite small, and sometimes even too small to make the analysis. A good example is if you want to go on the more detailed levels of ISCO classification, then quite immediately you are stopped by the too small sample size at the segmental level, and or missing categories by random, but they are problematic in the data analysis. If we would have unbiased estimation of real impact of, for example, differentiation between different types of jobs. Of course, there were some limitations. For example, in our survey of businesses, we have a problem with. So we have been very constrained with the time of the interview, because you can't have the interview with the manager which is longer than, let's say, half an hour. Yeah? Half an hour is really kind of the barrier which we can't overcome. Mainly these are telephone interviews because they're based on the multimode research, but with businesses, with managers, it was mainly a telephone interview because it appeared that as a kind of the easiest type of contact with the managers of the firm. The problem was, of course, the diversification of the competencies across jobs and the standardization of the questionnaire. And here I will show you what kind of idea we found and started already to do, but there is a tension. So if you would like to have a kind of general survey, so immediately there is a problem of very high variability among the professions, among the jobs, in the competencies and so on. So what we were able to grasp, and these are our model categories in the sense of the needs of employers, are those who are quite generic, transferable competencies, because they are repeated by every employer, yes? And very job-specific competencies appear quite relatively rare because they are not repeated across the survey. It doesn't mean that they are not important. Some of them, which are related to the professional skills related to the jobs, we grasp in a kind of general category vocational skills, but this is a very untransparent category. So there is really a problem with such a general survey. The obvious reaction is to do branch-oriented surveys, and I will speak a few words about it. There is a problem about asking about skills versus motivations, because we ask people about their jobs and about what they would like to do. There were problems. We then dropped one part of the questions from the questionnaire because it appeared that there was a very high correlation between what people did and what declared that they want to do. So also there was a problem how to compare supply with demand. It was not easy to, two populations, two samples, to some extent different instruments, because we had to we work with the same type of categories, but they were a bit differently specified. There were closed questions in the case of population. There were open-ended questions coded then in the case of employers. There were some hard aspects, so there were some innovations. So Szymon did some of them, Czarnik, Marcin worked on it quite hard, but still, so we give some, I think, interesting answers, but we are still in the process of thinking about how to measure it correctly. There is definitely the need for such a knowledge, but it's not easy to provide the data. So we based actually on declarative measurement. You can measure competencies differently, and PISA measures this by testing people. So cognitive aspects you can measure by testing people, but there are many competencies which are hard to measure, especially if you do the survey. And if you can't put people, for example, in the task force group and let them, for example, play a kind of management game to see if they can cooperate or not, of how they organize their work. So it is our problem, but we have some indications that validating this approach, although there is still in the plan, Educational Research Institute has a plan to, I hope it will be realized, to link the data from our measurement with the data of PIAC, and at least in the areas where there will be a kind of possibility to do a kind of criterion-based validation, to see to what extent we are really able to measure competencies by particular type of declarations. Because this declaration-based measurement is much easier to collect than any other type of measurement. And however, we have to validate it. So it's still a kind of face validity we have, and a kind of correlation-based criterion validity in some cases, but it's still quite weak base for saying that really what we measure via these declarations are really competencies, and to what extent people are able to estimate themselves correctly. It's on the side, of course, of people. On the side of businesses, we simply ask what they need, and here we have also some interesting comments, but not everything I will be able to comment today. Advantages, disadvantages, more or less are such as I mentioned just before. We have elaborated a set of competencies which are disaggregated in the sub-competencies, and some few examples of the analysis. I will not torture you with the kind of systematic presentation of any fragment, but rather would like to show you a type of simple presentations, simple glimpses from this, which give you a kind of general overview, and for more details reports you are invited to the website. Here you have, for example, on the side of businesses, the percentages of the firm which indicated particular competencies as important for particular jobs. Our first report was very important for the discussion in Poland because it indicated very strongly the general competencies such like social competencies, ability to work in groups, in project teams, and then it was really confirmed very much by discourse done by employers. Employers very heavily confirmed that this kind of competencies, general competencies needed. In Polish schools, at Polish universities, nobody cared about it actually. The cognitive competencies, at the second rank, some more professional competencies have been accented, but the general competencies have been neglected. So it was the impact to this discourse, definitely. The vocational are interesting if you go to different groups, but so it's a kind of general glimpse. The vocational are indicated as a really deficit while you ask not about searching for people at the labor market, but about own employees. Among all employees, the professional vocational competencies, those which are the skills related to particular jobs, are indicated most often as a deficit. But here again, we have a kind of a general category which is quite hard to be unfold without going to branch research. You have here the confirmation that actually the chances of being employed are really dependent on the level of education, especially if you look at the gender issue. So you may see that for female graduates, being the MA equalized the labor market chances with the males, and at the level of vocational training they are very much disadvantaged. So the result, social result of such a situation is quite obvious. We have 2/3 of female students at the tertiary level in Poland. However, there will be a problem with the marital homogamy. There are specialists here about it. We have such a phenomenon as marital homogamy, so if we have much more well-educated female than male, then there is a problem with marriages and children and divorces and so on. And of course, what is the important result of our analysis of lifelong learning of people between 25th and 64th age of level, that there is a dependence on the diploma. I mean, people with higher education stayed involved in lifelong learning. So when we have now increased just recently the participation at the tertiary level, so perhaps we might expect as a kind of time-lagged effect the future participation in the lifelong learning. The question is to what extent really the educational institutions are prepared for this. They try to be prepared, but still things to be done. So these are glimpses simply. I have some more of them. You can read on the webpage. If you write in Google BKL, you will find the rest of our interesting reports. And what I can say that actually we have some impact on the policy discourse, and the results are utilized in preparation of the law. Now what we do is also, now in Kraków, 3 consecutive years, we did a branch-oriented analysis, which gave us the chance to show the specificities of various branches. For example, computer science, industry or services, or business outsourcing services, chemistry and others. And we have interesting maps which show, for example, very interesting things, like, for example, that in the future for IT outsourcing, very important will be having communication skills. Communication, oral and verbal communication, not only computer languages, but maternal language, mother tongue, in which they should communicate well. Okay, I'm out of the time a little bit, and the next steps of our conference are ahead of us. So thank you very much.